Hi everyone. In the previous sessions, we have seen the concept of SQL. SQL means a kind of a structured query language which is meant for to work with relational databases. In the relational databases, the data is going to store in the form of a particular table structure. If you would like to retrieve some data, or if you would like to apply some kind of operations, we are going to use various kind of commands like ddl, dml, dcl, tcl. Like this we'll see, we have seen various kind of commands. Okay, if you take some in depth about the SQL, there may be some kind of problems. Those problems we can able to overcome in NoSQL. NoSQL is a kind of non-structured query language which is meant for various kind of non-relational tables. I mean, sometimes the people will call it as non-SQL, and sometimes some people will call it as not only SQL. But at the end, we are going to store the data in the form of other than the relational tables. Meaning that in SQL we are going to store in the form of relational tables. In non-SQL, we are going to store in the form of other than the relational tables. And here we can able to have a flexible schema where if the requirements are changing from time to time, we can able to create flexible schemas. But in the SQL, we have to compulsory define a fixed schema at the initial stage of while developing a database. And these NoSQL databases can able to handle large amount of data, meaning that it will respond quickly for large databases also whenever you are going to give certain kind of query. So because of this advantage, it is flexible for the developers. Okay, and when there is a rapid change in the requirements, or if you are trying to scale out your databases, then you can go for NoSQL. The best example for scale out the database, that is Mongo database. Okay, these are the list of features for the NoSQL. One is flexible schema. Right now I said, which is meant for if if there is any kind of requirements which needs to be frequently changed, then fixed schema won't be solve our problem. At the time, what we can do, we can go for flexible schemas. That is the best feature of this NoSQL. And one more feature is horizontal scaling. Guys, in SQL, we can able to perform a kind of operation like vertical scaling, meaning that scaling means we are trying to extend some data. Basically, what will happen if you go for SQL, for example, if you have a 2 GB server, that server is completely full. Now, if you would like to extend the server, it is not possible for us directly to extend the server. Instead, what we can do, we can take or we can buy a new server of type 4 GB RAM, 4 GB memory, or some 8 GB memory, whatever the memory that we require, that we are going to buy, and we are going to completely copy the data which is exists in the old database to the new database. See, meaning that we are going to migrating completely database. Okay, we cannot able to extend the existing database. But if you want to add some kind of extra powers to that, like CPU, RAM, we can able to do that. That process we call it as vertical scaling. But if you go for horizontal scaling, instead of buying the new server and making the migration, what we can do is we can buy a new server, but we can simply attach it to the existing server. That is the advantage of horizontal scaling, meaning that we can able to add more machines so that it can able to satisfy our requirement. That is what the future of NoSQL, that is horizontal scaling. And next kind of feature is fast querying. So here we are achieving this concept because of there is no concept of joins here. Yes. Generally, if you take SQL, in SQL we have multiple tables are there to avoid the redundancy. And if somebody is asking for some kind of data, we need to query the data, which we need to get it from multiple tables. That multiple tables, if you want to get, we need to use the concept of joins. But trying to get the data from multiple tables with help of joins is a very complex concept, and it will take some time also. So here there is no concept of joins. So the querying is very fast. So here they are using thumb rule. That thumb rule is data that is accessed together should be stored together. Meaning that whatever the data that we are expecting that user is asking from our end, from the database end, that should be stored together. So that we don't need to use the concept of joins, and it won't take much time to get that data. So this is the way we can achieve the feature of fast query. And you know, right, it is easy for the developers if it is having horizontal scaling and if it is having flexible schemas. developers will feel very happy in order to work with these databases. Coming to uh, when we are going to use NoSQL over the SQL concept. Okay, if you would like to develop an application within the less time, if you would like to develop an application within a very quick manner, then I can go for NoSQL, meaning that the pace of development should be very fast, then I can go for NoSQL. And also, sometimes the requirements are changing frequently, then we can go for NoSQL. See, as NoSQL is a kind of flexible schema, we can have flexible schema we can able to create a flexible schema, right? So when the requirements are changing, we can able to change its structure also. So that's why we can go for at this particular instance of time we can go for NoSQL. And also sometimes your website may having more traffic, and at the initial stages we don't know exactly how much traffic we may expect for our website. At that time, if you want to scalable the traffic of our website easily, then you can go for NoSQL. And also during your exam results time, you are going to get something like when multiple people are trying to access your database website at a time, website may not be responded, right? That is what we call it as a downtime of the website. So through NoSQL, we can reduce this downtime to zero at the maximum extent. So the scale of traffic and need for zero downtime cannot be handled by SQL, but this can be handled by NoSQL. At this particular instant of time, we can go for NoSQL. I mean, if you would like to achieve the zero downtime and if you would like to scale the traffic of your website easily, then you can go for NoSQL. And this NoSQL can support various kind of paradigms like microservices, analytics, etc. Like for example, if you take normal SQL, relational database, that relational database contains the data. So in that database, if you would like to store it or if you would like to perform some kind of transaction, you can able to perform the transaction. That's okay for us. But at the same instant, if you would like to perform analytical service, that is not possible for us. Okay, meaning that at a particular instant of time, if you would like to perform some kind of transactions and you need to perform some kind of analyzation, that particular thing cannot be get through the concept of SQL, but we can able to get it through NoSQL databases. Meaning that at a particular instant of time, you can go with both analytics purpose as well as transaction services. Coming to the microservices paradigm, so this is the latest one actually. In Java it is there. Microservices means each and every service is going to be distributed across multiple servers at different locations. Different locations. In order to work with all these different servers, we can able to that can be handled by NoSQL, but for SQL it is not possible. Yes. So this kind of paradigms can also be handled by NoSQL. So in these particular situations, we can go for simply NoSQL. Yes. Coming to the various use of NoSQL which the industry people are using. First one is user profile store or something like session store, content and metadata store, third party data aggregation, e-commerce, ad targeting, like that. We'll have various kind of applications are there. We can call it as advantages or we can call it as users in the industry. Coming to user profile store, like for example, you are going to develop a website which you are going to maintain some kind of profile of the user. Basically, in SQL, you can able to store the data in the form of tables. But the thing is, nowadays, as the requirements are changing from time to time, the client may ask to store some extra data. Then we need to change the schema. That will be a difficult process for us. At that time, what we can do is we can go for NoSQL where we are having a no structure. So if the client is coming for us and asking for you to change some kind of schema structure, then we can simply migrate to new structure. So at that particular instance of time also we can go for NoSQL. Something like uh, profile personalization. Some people are interested to store their serial number, their phone number, their mail ID. Some people are interested to store their serial number, their mail ID, their phone number, and their gender. See, two people are interested to store different type of structured data. At that time, relational database is not exact structure for us. Okay, so then we can go for NoSQL. Coming to session store, see sometimes, not sometimes, if you take any website, every website is going to use a mechanism called caching mechanism. You know it. Caching mechanism is helpful for to define various kind of personalization purpose only, like ad targeting or some kind of to maintain your login credentials, etc. That we will see in the PHP actually session concept. Yes, coming to session store. In session store also, if you want, you can able to use NoSQL because it will be scalable for us. Based upon the requirement, we can able to increase its scalability of the database storage. That will be enough for us. And also, based upon this caching, we can able to get the quick data, quick response. That is one of the advantages. NoSQL can able to quickly respond to our queries because we are not using any kind of joins concept, right? Yes. So at that situation also we can go for session store, content and metadata store. See, if we take something like any kind of storage where we are trying to store the large data, NoSQL is meant for to store a huge data, right? For example, if we take library of one particular university, that library can be of vast number of books. There we need to maintain some kind of metadata about those books, metadata about those books. And when we are trying to query something, it needs to be respond quickly, even though whether it is a large database or whether it is a small database. At that particular instant of time also, your NoSQL, you can able to use NoSQL. That particular websites you can able to use NoSQL. And some kind of third party data aggregations. For example, I am a kind of a retailer where I'm trying to manufacture or trying to produce various kind of dresses for various kind of age people, age people. Now, I have distributed that to various kind of retailers who are my clients. Now, what my requirement is, I need to gather the something like so and so company B, whether how many products they sell it or not. How, whether so and so company C, how many products they sell it or not, for the age of people 30. Like that, we may get certain kind of queries. At the time, if you want, you can able to aggregate it easily. Meaning that if the data which is available in different kind of servers, that data we can able to get to our end and we can able to aggregate it if we are trying to use NoSQL, because NoSQL will support the data splitting, right? uh, which they, we can call it as the distributing of data. We can able to distribute the data to different clients. That data we can able to get and we can able to aggregate it. So that is the advantage of third party data aggregation. And coming to e-commerce, right, nowadays e-commerce websites are very vast, and those requirements are changing from time to time. So at the time also we can able to use NoSQL. And coming to ad targeting, right, so these ads will vary from client interest to client interest, meaning that from browser to browser these ads are varying, right? So if the user wants to make more quick uh, more quick way of ads, something like when the user is trying to open a website or a browser, immediately I need to produce some kind of ad. Then our website, our server should be in a position to produce what are the user preferences in order to produce the ad. Then I can immediately produce certain ad regarding that. So for that also you can able to go with NoSQL, meaning that for fast response you can go for NoSQL. For large databases you can go for NoSQL. If you want to maintain some kind of different kind of data, you can go for NoSQL. Like this, will have various kind of features are there. So this is the way industry is using. And let's discuss the various differences between the relational database management system and the NoSQL database. So obviously, in RDBMS we are going to share the data in the form of tables. If you observe here, NoSQL, sorry, if you observe here, users, this user table having ID, first name, last name, cell and city. And the corresponding user ID 1, I am trying to store his hobbies in another table. So if I am trying to store in the same table, what will happen? There will be more null. So that's why I am not allowing. I am going to store it in multiple tables so that I will eradicate the null values. Okay, fine. So to work on the drawback, I have gone for two tables. That's okay for me. So the given requirement is stored in the form of tables. Now here I am having certain question. How to retrieve all of the information about a user and their hobbies? Now I would like to retrieve the data of user and the hobbies which are available in two tables. Now what I need to do? I need to combine these two tables with the help of joins concept, and I need to retrieve the data. Am I right or not? Yes. So as I'm trying to use here joins concept, it will obviously going to take some time. Take some time. Okay, fine. So this is what happening in RDBMS. If you go for NoSQL, in NoSQL you are going to store the data in the form of some kind of document structure, or some kind of key value pairs, or some kind of column wise, or some kind of graph databases. Here I have shown one structure which is a kind of a document type structure. I have stored data. See, here also we'll have ID, first name, last name, cell, city. These first five rows are related to first table, and last row is related to second table. If you observe it clearly. Now guys, here I have stored this data in this particular form. Now if I have the same question like how to retrieve all of the information about a user and their hobbies, can I able to get it quickly or not? Because all my data is available at the same location, I can able to get it quickly. That is the advantage of NoSQL. One of the So here we don't need to use the joins, because all are available at the same location. With the help of simple query, I can able to get it. This is the main difference between RDBMS and NoSQL. In RDBMS, we are going to store in the form of tables. In NoSQL, we are going to store in the form of some kind of documents, or it can be a kind of key value pairs, or it can be something uh, column wise, or it can be kind of graph wise. Okay, fine. And some more differences are there. I explained already. If you take RDBMS, that schema will be a fixed schema, whereas in NoSQL that will be a flexible schema. And coming to scaling, RDBMS is kind of vertical scaling, whereas in NoSQL it is a kind of horizontal scaling. And coming to reliance on data to object mapping, see, this is important. Whenever you are trying to work with object mapping, whenever you are trying to work with object oriented programming, all your data is going to store in the form of objects, and you are trying to work with SQL. Now you need to store your object data into SQL. What you need to do? You need to convert that structured format of object into structured query language format. Meaning that you need to make it a way of storing the data in the form of corresponding table structure. But if you take NoSQL, in NoSQL the data is in the form of various kind of objects. Like that can be a document, that can be a key value pair, like that, right? Now my data is available in the form of an object, and my database is also trying to store in the form of an object. Then I need to convert. Meaning that object mapping is easy in NoSQL, whereas coming to RDBMS, object mapping is somewhat difficult because we need to convert that explicitly. These are some of the difference between RDBMS and NoSQL databases. Coming to various kind of misconceptions which we are having in NoSQL, the data which we are trying to store in the relational databases must and should have a kind of relationship. That is, we know. The thing is, relationship data is best suited for relational databases. That is a kind of misconception. But actually, if you go for guys here, there is a table called users and there is a table called hobbies. It's a kind of relational table. That table have I easily converted into a kind of document or not? Yes. With that statement, I can say that this is a kind of misconception. It is not only specifically meant for relational databases, we can able to represent the relationship data in NoSQL also. Okay, and NoSQL databases don't support ACID transaction. This is also a misconception. NoSQL support ACID properties also. ACID means something like atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, which is meant for to maintain our database constantly in a perfect manner after performing certain kind of transactions. The same thing will be maintained by NoSQL also. Here they are following the principle called base principle and why it is achieving means, see, observe, my data, whatever the related data that I am trying to store in single location, we could update a single document, no multi-record transaction is required. That's why it is achieving the feature of ACID property. If we take this single document, here itself we are trying to store the data, no need of updating in the multiple tables. That's why we are achieving. Yes. Those are the two misconceptions. And if we take some more difference about the SQL language and the NoSQL generalized languages, SQL is a kind of a language which is specifically used for various kind of relational database management systems. Whereas coming to NoSQL, this NoSQL is a kind of a general language specifically meant for non-relational databases, or sometimes we can call it as unstructured databases, or we can go for distributed database systems. So why I'm saying, if my data is distributed over multiple servers, that is what we call it as distributed database systems. And SQL databases, I mean, in relational databases, the schema is of fixed type, and then we are going to use a SQL language in order to query that database. Whereas coming to NoSQL, these databases are of variable length and which will be changed frequently from time to time because of the requirements may change. That is what we call it as dynamic schema. And SQL database are going to store in the form of tables, whereas non-SQL database are going to store in the form of key value pairs, documents, graph database, or some kind of wide column. Guys, let me take this in depth in the coming slides. This point. And SQL database are going to scalable vertically, whereas NoSQL database are going to scalable horizontally. We can simply attach for non-SQL, but if you go for SQL, we need to migrate to the completely new database. So SQL databases are going to use SQL language, that wide thing, right? Which is going to use by SQL language, whereas NoSQL database are going to use some kind of unstructured query language, which is going to vary from database to database. Okay, fine. So based upon the implementation of the database, right? Here also, structured queries language also will be modified, right? From database to database. Like if you take MySQL database, some slight modifications are there in the SQL. In MySQL server, in MySQL database, we'll use varchar. Whereas in Oracle, we are going to use varchar 2. That is the difference you have to observe. There is slight deviation in the usage of languages. That can be either in SQL or it can be either in non-SQL. If you go for SQL databases, these are best suited for complex queries, whereas coming to non-SQL, that is NoSQL, we don't have the concept of complex queries because here we are not using any kind of joins concept, because as the data which is related to the same type are always stored at the same location. That's why we don't need to write any kind of special queries here, special complex queries. But if at all, if there is any requirement to write special complex queries, then compulsory you need to go with the complex queries. But these are not that much powerful for us, and it is also very difficult. That's why I'm saying that it is not good. And SQL databases are not suited for hierarchical storages, whereas NoSQL databases are suited for hierarchical storages also. Okay, I mean it can be suited for hierarchical as well as non-hierarchical. But if you go for SQL, this is not suited for hierarchical database storages. Okay, fine. And coming to the implementation of these languages, SQL, we have seen it already. That is, MySQL server is there, Oracle server is there, Splite, PostgreSQL, MS SQL, which means simply called as SQL server. Like that, we'll have various kind of implementation servers are there for SQL. Coming to NoSQL, especially the important one is nowadays trend, that is MongoDB, Bigtable, Redis, RavenDB, Cassandra, HBase, Neo4j, CouchDB, etc. These are the various examples of NoSQL database system. So these are some of the differences which I have listed down here between the SQL and NoSQL. Coming to various kind of NoSQL type of databases, like based upon the way, if you observe the third point, based upon the way they are going to use the database storage, I have classified it into four types. One is key value stores, document stores, wide column stores, and another one is graph databases. Okay, if you observe in depth about each and every one by one, this is what we call it as key value stores. In key value stores, the data is going to store in the form of key value pair sum. Like if you can observe here, ID is a key, 111 is a value, FNAME is a key, ABC is a value, LNAME is a key, XYZ is a value. So like this. So if you are trying to store data in the form of various kind of key value pairs, then we can go for key value type of databases. Okay, there are various kind of key value type of databases, like that can be a Redis database which is available in the real time, DynamoDB, Oracle NoSQL. Like this, we will having various kind of database are there. Like for example, if you take SQL databases, MySQL server is there, Oracle server is there, like that. Here also for this type of requirement, we'll have various kind of implement database like Redis. You can observe here logo. There is a logo here, Redis logo. Okay, so where we are using this key value stores kind of databases. Basically, we are using at caching level. So if you would like to store the caches, like if you would like to store some kind of define some kind of temporary data like caches, cache mechanism. So these caches are going to available in our browser, you know that. So where here it is going to store the username and passwords or some kind of basic requirement like how much time we need to maintain all these passwords, like that. At that particular instance also we can go for the key value kind of storage mechanisms and some kind of session managements, like you need to maintain some session like between from login to logout, then you can go for some kind of key value storage mechanism, something like if you like to implement some kind of leaderboards. See, there is a kind of competition. In that competition you need to define some kind of leaderboards between I would like to define the leaderboard for 5 people. In order to maintain that data, who are first, who are second, who are third, 4 and 5, like that, then I can go for the key value source kind of mechanism. Okay, fine. So this is all about key value source. And coming to the real world, in the real world, this particular logo is related to what? Pinterest. Pinterest is the company using this key value kind of storage mechanism, and also Twitter is also using key value kind of storage mechanism. So I have listed only few here. There are a lot of companies which are using key value storage mechanism also. Basically, key value storage mechanism, the data is going to store in the form of key values. Key values, that's it. Coming to second kind of mechanism, that is document stores, meaning that in document stores the data is going to store in the form of document sum. If you observe here, if you can able to observe the data which is available between the pair of flower parentheses, that is what we call it as a document. Let me explain what is the structure, but assume that this is a kind of a document. In this particular document, one tuple will be available. One particular data, if you take some relational database data, one corresponding data will be available. If they want to communicate with other data, then they can go for using object ID. You can observe here object ID is 200. That will be connected to this data. Like this, they can be connected to this one. So in document stores, the data will be represented in the form of documents, where document is a kind of a collection of pair of flower transit data. And when we'll go for this one means basically for all kind of websites you can go for document stores mechanism. And basically if you would like to store large data, then you can go for document stores or some kind of analytics purpose also. It is, even though if you are having large data, in order to make some kind of analyzation and in order to make support of some kind of transactions, then I can go for document stores. And there are some kind of implemented websites, implemented database are there like MongoDB. Right now it is very famous. Apache CouchDB and Azure Cosmo DB. You can observe on the left side. These are the logos for them. And one of the famous company Uber using this document source data type database. Okay, coming to next kind of storage mechanism, that is wide column storage mechanism. Here data is going to store in the form of columns, like we are having vast column which we can call it as a wide column. In this wide column I can able to combine what data I need. See, if you observe here, this is a super column called name. This super column contains the first name, last name, I combine. But if you observe this entire thing, I have defined the variable length columns. See, for id triple one, if I want to store some, if there is nothing, so I don't want to store anything. Similarly, like this, I have stored in the form of columns, then I can call it as a wide column storage mechanism. Here there are some implemented database are there like Cassandra, HBase, and we can use it in the real time for IoTs or some kind of inventory management system or some kind of big data purpose. We can go for wide column source. And there is a famous company called Netflix which is using this wide column source for their requirement satisfaction. And coming to graph databases, that here we are going to store the data in the form of nodes. We are going to store the data in the form of nodes, and the relation between the nodes we are going to represent in the form of wedges. See, observe, ABC is a friend of XYZ. ABC address is so and so. ABC orders so and so computer, so and so price for that, and so and so tax he has paid. So meaning that everything represented in the form of nodes, and they have connected via edges. So basically, you will go with this graph databases when you are trying to work with any kind of social networking platform or any kind of recommendations which you want to give suggestions. Then I can go for graph databases. So there are some kind of databases are there which are implemented already, like Neo4j and JNAS graph. Like that, we will have various kind of graph database are there. And there is a company called Walmart, which is very famous one in the world, so which is using graph databases. So like this, we'll have four types of databases are there. So based upon the way they are storing, they have used, they have classified this NoSQL into four kind of databases. Okay, fine. Next, let us go with one of the implemented database, that is MongoDB. MongoDB, and we are going to use a language here as NoSQL language only. Okay, so the MongoDB is one kind of document-oriented database, and it is freely available for us. So we can call it as a open source. Okay, and this MongoDB are going to store the data in the form of documents only, but the documents will contains records, right? That will be in the form of BSON format. BSON means a binary representation of JSON. Binary representation of JSON. Okay, guys, I hope you remember the concept of JSON which we discussed in JavaScript. JSON means JavaScript object notation. JavaScript object notation. You can observe here. JavaScript object notation. Guys, I have discussed it there regarding if you take a kind of an object array, right? We can take an array of objects, right? There we are going to represent some kind of square branches. In that square branch, we are going to represent all the objects. Okay, so nesting of array of objects, right? In the nesting of array of objects concept, if we simply remove the square branches and by simply replacing with flower branches, that we can call it as a JSON format, JavaScript object notation. Here you can observe how we are going to represent the object. Object we are going to represent in the form of key value pairs only, right? I underscore ID is a key, one is a value, underscore sorry name is a key, and it's a kind of an object. So this is also a kind of an object. Intern is a kind of an object. Once again, it will have a form name value pairs. So like this, if it is a collection of name value pairs, and if we are going to represent the form of flower branches, we can call it as JSON. So we'll take it clearly for further in PHP also. Basically, there are two languages are there, like one is XML, another one is JSON, which are meant for to transfer data from one end to another end easily, because these are the common pattern. For example, let me take, I would like to communicate with North Indian people to the South Indian people. So North Indian people know the Hindi basically, whereas coming to South Indian people basically know, let me take some language like Telugu. Right? If these people want to communicate, they need compulsory kind of common language like English, right? Similarly, if multiple developers are trying to communicate, they require a common language. That language is JSON language, or it can be a kind of XML language. In XML, the data is going to be available in the form of tags, where user defined tags, whereas JSON, the data is available in the form of key value pairs represented in the form of pair of flower branches. Okay, in MongoDB, they have extended that JSON into a binary representation. That is what they are calling it as BSON format. And as it is NoSQL kind of language here, we are no need to define any kind of predefined schema. And right, so as there is no predefined schema, every document can be of different type, because requirements may be changed, right? When the requirement changes, one particular person details of is required three tuples, and one particular person requires two tuples. So every document having a different kind of data. So you understood this is the meaning of JSON. And if you observe the difference between the JSON and BSON, JSON will support only few data types like string, boolean, number, and array. Whereas coming to BSON, it is going to support various kind of other data types, which includes the JSON format also. Some kind of documents also it will support, something like raw binary, all these things. Okay. So and there is some more differences are there, like encoding mechanism, which is going to support JSON will support like UTF-8 string, whereas coming to BSON, which is going to supported by binary also. And coming to readability aspect, JSON can be read by humans. You can observe, right now we can read, and that can be read by machine also. And whereas coming to BSON, which will be read by only machine. Coming to the exact difference between the RDBMS and the MongoDB, how the relational tables are structured as part of MongoDB. You can observe here. Person is a kind of a table, car is a kind of table. They have split into two tables because they need to avoid some kind of null values and they need to avoid some kind of extra storage capacity. And this, if they want to retrieve some data, they need to use the compulsory concept of joins. Now how they did implemented here in MongoDB is, in MongoDB everything represented in the form of JSON like bson format. The person table they mentioned as here you can observe first name, this is first name, surname, city, location extra added here. And to avoid the giants concept, they are embedding this data also here only. So what they did, they mentioned a cars object. This cars object will internally contains an array of objects. So they are simply embedding here. So this is the way you can able to implement. Here you can observe model, year, value, and some other. If they are having more cars, then I can go for another model, another year, another value, like that. See, if you take here for Paul, the person ID is 0. Yes, Paul, whose surname is Miller, who is located at London. And if you take his cars, he is having two cars are there. Two cars are there. That is connected by a person ID 0, and they are having list. So that's why they mentioned here two tables, two kind of objects. This is the way we can able to simply MongoDB is also kind of replica of RDBMS, but it will support extra feature that is flexible schema. Like we can able to avoid the joins. We can able to extend it to any kind of level of data storage. Okay, if we take further, the data which we represent here, I made simply extended as a form of documents. Here, this is a 1% data document, this is a 1% data, this is 1% data, this is 1% data, this is 1% data. That's why I said every document could have different data. Meaning that this particular person can have multiple cars, this person can have only one car, this person can have no cars, and can have one car. We can represent in the form of variable length because there is no schema concept here. So that's why we represent like this. Okay, if you know the terminology here, that will be good for us. In MongoDB, database will be called as database. In MongoDB, tables will be called as collection. These are the keywords that you need to remember. In MongoDB, row we call it as a document. That document can be represented either in the JSON or in the BSON. In MongoDB, column will be represented as field, and index will be represented as index. And there is no concept of join here. There is no concept of join here. We are simply embedding the document, right? You can observe here. We are to avoid the usage of joins concept. I am simply embedding this car into here only. That is what I am embedding the document. Inside the document, I am trying to embed one more document. That is what we call it as embedding the document to avoid the concept of joins. Okay, guys. Yes, I think it is completed. Yes. So for the next class, we'll see the installation part and the practical part of querying all the things that we'll see in the next class. Okay, fine. Thank you, guys.